Okay. Oh, and there's someone from Texas too. So welcome. Yeah, everybody. This is a great presentation. This Marie has been here before, and I always love to have Marie to come and do talks with us. So I'm going to hand this over to you, Marie. So welcome.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. I think it's great that we have people from out of state joining us. I will say that we live in a Mediterranean climate, and so it may be different from some of the other places where people live, but nonetheless, some of the concepts, the tenets will be exactly the same. So I guess let's just go ahead and get started then. So let's see here. Okay. All right. Franklin, you see my screen? Everything good?
Yes, it's great.
Okay, good. All right. So today we're going to talk about rethinking the lawn. And as a quick reminder of who we are, or who I am representing here today, is the Master Gardeners. And we are trained non-paid members of the University of California Cooperative Extension. And in that role, we answer inquiries and provide research-based information on home horticulture, pest management, and sustainable landscape practices. And reducing or replacing your lawn definitely goes into the sustainable landscape practices category. And you'll have an opportunity to do this at the end of my talk, but the Master Gardeners do have a free seasonal e-newsletter that we invite you to sign up for. And you can use this QR code if you just hold your phone up to it with, like, you're going to take a photo, but don't take a photo. It'll open up a little something that will allow you to go ahead and subscribe for free. And I think we're all getting used to these QR codes now from restaurants, from all the menus these days. So, okay, here's what we're going to cover today. First, why replace your lawn? Second, 3 methods for removing your lawn. And third, and possibly the most important, what do you put where your lawn was? I think many of us sort of have this assumption that, well, it was a green flat expanse, so I've got to put another green flat expanse there. But I'm hoping that I can introduce you to some other ideas. Okay, so let's start with the first one. Why replace your lawn? Well, the biggie we all know, especially here in California, is to save water, right? Lawns use more land and water than any single ag crop in the United States, even more water than swimming pools. And by that, it's about the evaporation, right? More water evaporates or is needed to keep a lawn green than evaporates from pools. Half of Marin's water is used for gardens, mostly for lawns. We know for a fact that drought is becoming more frequent and more intense, and this is all because of climate change. And in the recent past was the driest on record since record keeping began in 1895. And those in the Southwest have had a really horrible time. In fact, in some areas, it's the worst in 1,200 years. So drought is seriously upon us. In our state, in California, during times of drought, we take 50% more water out of the ground. We take 50% more groundwater out of the earth. And it doesn't sound like any big deal unless you realize that in some parts of California, the land has actually sunk. It is sinking by 1 foot or more a year in some places, especially in the valley, little, east of us. So that's serious business. So here's the question. Can your plant choices truly make a difference? The answer is a resounding yes. And let me just give you a little comparison here. This photo of the little green lawn here, this could easily have about 7 pop-up sprayers irrigating it, running for 10 minutes. Each time that 10 minutes goes by, it'll use about 70 gallons of water. But what if we took that little green expanse and we planted 50 plants in its place? That's a lot, 50. Now, Pop-up sprayers are measured in gallons per minute. Every minute, how many gallons come out? Drip irrigation is measured in gallons per hour, right? How much water comes out in an hour, right? So if we have 1 gallon per hour drip emitters on each of 50 plants, we will only use 8.5 gallons of water in 10 minutes. So that's a gargantuan difference. And of course, we can also go for no and low water gardens, right? There are those animals out there. So let's keep going with all the benefits of replacing your lawn. In addition to saving water, you also save energy. In fact, moving water in California takes 20% of the state's electricity. I mean, think about that. 1 out of 5 kilowatts, bits of electricity comes from moving water around the state. Saving water has a trickle effect. Save energy, and when you save energy, you cut down on greenhouse gases, and when you cut down on greenhouse gas, you help mitigate climate change, and when you mitigate climate change, you help reduce the frequency and intensity of drought. So as you see, it's this wonderful chain of events that happens when you save water and therefore energy. We also know that the fertilizers and pesticides and herbicides take significant energy to produce. Many of them are synthetic. Many, but not all, are synthetic. Lawns also take significant human energy, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And so who among us does not want to cut down on a little bit of that when it comes to caring for our gardens? We also know that reducing or replacing your lawn can help reduce pollution. And that's because lawn care constitutes a gargantuan quantity of gas, fertilizer, pesticides, and as an aside, lots of noisy machinery. Now we're a little bit more evolved here. I would hope to think in Marin County. So I bet you those of us who have lawns are not probably dumping a lot of things on them. But believe me when I tell you that it is the norm. It is the way lawns are managed, with many chemicals. And here's another little chain of events. So lawn chemicals run off into lakes, streams, creeks, and in our case, the bay, because we live right on the bay, where they unfortunately can kill or harm insects and fish and disrupt the food chain. And in the end, unfortunately, it can degrade our drinking water. So this is not something we want to do. Here's some EPA findings about lawn fertilizers, herbicides, and insecticides. And these are direct quotes from the Environmental Protection Agency. Some lawn chemicals threaten native plants by harming beneficial insects that safely control weeds and unwanted insects. Lawn chemicals account for the majority of wildlife poisonings reported to the EPA. Several types of cancer, immunoresponse deficiencies, dermatological diseases, and birth defects have been associated with exposure to lawn chemicals. And rates of lymphoma in pets of pesticide users are significantly higher than occurrences in the pets of non-chemical users. And one thing I just want to mention here to bear in mind is these are plenty of negatives for those of us who, are rethinking our lawns, but think about the people who have to work on, the laborers who are working in the lawn care area, or folks you see coming to different homes caring for lawns. They are exposed to these things all the time. So it gives us pause. So I'm going to play this little 2-minute video to give you a sense of what this so-called nutrient pollution is all about.
Nutrient pollution is a widespread national problem and is well documented in places like the Chesapeake Bay, the Mississippi River Basin, and Puget Sound. Nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus are a natural part of the ecosystem. They support the growth of aquatic plants. But human activities cause an excess of nitrogen and phosphorus in the environment. Surface and groundwater becomes polluted, creating a serious problem known as nutrient pollution. Nutrient pollution can affect you and your family's health as it threatens our drinking water supplies and places where we like to swim and fish. Excess nutrients can also cause an explosion of algae growth called algal blooms. These can be foamy, scummy, or a thick mat of slime on the surface of the water or along the beach. Some algal blooms are harmful because they produce toxins that can make people sick. These blooms also hurt tourism, reduce property values, and drive up water treatment costs. The nutrients move downstream, killing fish and creating large dead zones where no aquatic life can survive. It's one of the most serious water pollution issues facing our nation. Nutrient pollution comes from farms, lawn fertilizer, pet waste, city streets, faulty septic systems, and sewage treatment plants. Limiting nutrient pollution from excess nitrogen and phosphorus will protect people's health, support the economy, and keep America's waters safe for swimming and fishing. Awareness is the first step in preventing and reducing nutrient pollution. Learn what you can do to make a difference at epa.gov/nutrient pollution.
Okay, so that gives you a sense of how important it is to keep our waterways clear and how we can prevent creating problems. Whoops. Now I need to figure out how to advance here. Okay, so we also mentioned the human energy involved in keeping a lawn healthy and green. And unfortunately, getting rid of your lawn can definitely help save you time because they are extremely high maintenance. I think part of the reason why they're so ubiquitous is that they're just familiar to folks and they're inexpensive to purchase and lay down. Sod, of course, I'm speaking of, but I can't think of any other plants that I have to mow, clip, edge, aerate, feed, seed, weed, and water. That is a lot of maintenance for one type of plant. And of course, when you save water and energy, you're also saving money, and that is a huge benefit for all of us, right? And one of my favorite reasons is because getting rid of a lawn helps you make better use of the space. Lawns are often referred to as green deserts because they really don't have any environmental value. They certainly don't in our area. And the question to me when I look at these two side by side is, where would you rather be, a bee or a hummingbird or a robin or frankly any living thing, right? The photo on the right is filled with life and all the benefits that come from that, whereas the one on the left is actually hurting the environment by gobbling up lots of our precious water. And along with that, you know, getting rid of your lawn helps you create a sense of place. This is a picture, this is California in the summer right here, in many parts of California, right? This is why we're called the Golden State, because in summer we turn tawny, gold, amber, yellow. This is our Mediterranean climate. We are dry, we are bone dry every summer, right? It's just something we can count on. And it has absolutely nothing to do with this type of look. The grassy look, that green carpet of lawn is something we've borrowed from areas that have much more rainfall. And the history of lawns is sort of interesting, actually. It's, you know, people were trying to sort of look fancy or like the aristocracy in Europe when that all started and so forth. But again, as you can see, there is just absolutely zero similarity. In short, replacing your lawn is a key step in creating a sustainable, earth-friendly garden. So, how do you get started? Well, let's talk about the three ways to remove a lawn. So you can dig it out, or you can solarize, or smother. So let's just dive into those quickly. Digging out your lawn, where you start with there is getting a sod cutter. And so you have to rent that. That can be a little expensive. And it can be hard work digging up one of these lawns, but it can be done. And basically what you do is you just slice it up and then you put it in the landfill, where it's probably going to take a fair amount of time to compost. And if it was put down on sod, it's going to have the plastic behind it. But, you know, anyway, you're going to be replacing it for a good reason, I'm sure. The negatives is that it really tears up, it really disturbs that topsoil. And believe it or not, that top 1 or 2 feet of soil is so incredibly valuable. It is just teeming with life. When it's healthy, it is teeming with life. And so this is like creating a huge earthquake for all the life underground there. And it's also leaving all the weeds, seeds, and roots. So you might find that whatever you put there instead, suddenly you have things that you don't want popping right back up. Then there's solarizing. And this is, you may have seen this around town. I see this every so often as well. This is where you mow the grass, and you leave the clippings and you wet it down, and then you cover it with clear plastic and you seal it all around the edge. You can do it with bricks. In the case of this photo, looks like they use soil to really seal it up, which soil is probably more effective than bricks. You have to leave it there for a minimum of 2 months, probably a little longer. And the good thing is that it kills all the sod and the weeds, but the bad thing is that it doesn't build the soil. In fact, it kills the things in the soil, and it's pretty darn ugly to look at during the process. Not that that's your main goal here, because it's a transition phase, but the biggest negative is that it does not build the soil. So then here's the method that we really recommend for reducing or replacing your lawn, and that is called sheet mulching, also called sheet composting, or some refer to it as the lasagna method, which you can see a little piece of sheet mulching there at the bottom photo. Looks like a little piece of environmental lasagna there. And so the nice thing is this is easy, free, or cheap, very inexpensive. It recycles materials. It instantly provides healthy soil that you can actually berm up and plant right into. And the only materials you need are organic materials, cardboard, and mulch. So if you don't have cardboard, you can, and it's not a huge area, you could even use thick layer of newspaper. So now I have a 7-minute video to show you that really goes through the process, exactly what you go through for sheet composting. So let's check it out. Whoops. Here we go.
Hi, my name is Kat. I'm a landscape architect, and today I'm going to show you how to rethink your lawn the bay-friendly way. Now here's what a conventional lawn looks like. Ornamental and underused, but now lots of folks are transforming those lawns into bay-friendly gardens. These diverse and beautiful gardens will help you use less water, are easier to maintain, require less chemical fertilizers and pesticides, save energy, and produce fewer greenhouse gases. In addition, they also build healthy soil and plants. Replacing your lawn is a great opportunity to create a bay-friendly garden. You can create a habitat for bees and butterflies, start your own vegetable garden or orchard, create an urban retreat, or a perfect space for you, your children, and your pets. The possibilities are endless, and once you develop a plan, the rest is pretty easy. Now I'm going to show you how to sheet mulch. Sheet mulching is a cheap and easy way to replace your lawn. If you don't want to do your entire lawn, you can start with just mulching a part of your yard a little bit at a time. It doesn't require the use of heavy equipment or pesticides. And once you have the materials, sheet mulching can be completed in a day, depending on the size of the area you are covering. So let me explain how sheet mulching works. Sheet mulching is a technique of laying cardboard or newspaper over an existing lawn and then topping it off with wood mulch. The layers break down naturally to feed the soil with microbes, creating a vibrant ecosystem which is going to give you healthier soil and plants. But sheet mulching is also an ideal way to suppress weeds, build your soil health, and replace lawns. The best time to sheet mulch is in the fall to take advantage of the rains, but it can be done any time of the year. There are many different ways to sheet mulch, but I'm going to show you a simple way recommended by the Bay Friendly program. First, you're going to prepare the site. If you have tall weeds, you are going to want to knock them down or mow existing vegetation so that it lies flat. Then, remove only woody or bulky plant materials. If you plan to retrofit your sprinkler heads for drip irrigation, be sure to flag the sprinkler heads now so that you can find them again when you're done. I'll show you all about sprinkler head retrofitting in part 2. Now, some plants are going to need to be removed before sheet mulching, such as invasive plants that spread by rhizomes, bulbs, or that resprout from extensive root systems. Some examples include blackberries, oxalis, horsetails, kikuyu, and Bermuda grass. When removing these invasive plants from around plants that you will be keeping, be careful that you don't damage the roots of the plants that you are keeping. Next, we're going to soak the area with water to start the natural process of decomposition. To avoid runoff and keep mulch from spilling over onto sidewalks or driveways, you can use a flat-edge shovel to cut the lawn away 8 to 12 inches from the edge of the concrete. The soil should be at least 3 inches below the grade. In other words, 3 inches below the top of the concrete. Your excess soil and sod can be mounded away from the edges and sheet mulched in place. If you're sheet mulching a lawn, just flip the edges over so the roots in the soil are face up. If you encounter the plastic netting that came with your sod, don't worry about it. Throw away the pieces that you see. Your leftover soil and any extra plant material or prunings can be used to create mounds for plants that like well-drained soils. Many native plants thrive on these mounds. Mounds also create more visual interest in the garden by adding height and depth. All right, once the area is prepped, then you're ready to install 5-gallon or larger plants. Next, you'll add a weed barrier. It is essential that this barrier be permeable to water and air. Recycled cardboard boxes work great. You can get big sheets of cardboard from appliance stores or bike shops. You can also buy recycled cardboard rolls or use multiple layers of newspaper or burlap. Be sure you don't use plastic or weed cloth, which won't biodegrade. Remember, this is all about building your soil naturally. When you're placing your cardboard pieces down, be sure to overlap the pieces by 6 to 8 inches so the sun won't get through them. You want to starve your weeds of light. As you're working, you can rip and fold the cardboard to accommodate the space around your plants. Now completely cover the ground except where there are established plants that you don't want to cover. Cover all green lawn to keep the sunlight from hitting it. Remember, any lawn showing at the end of the project will come right back. Next, we're going to wet down the cardboard to keep it in place to make it easier to shape around obstacles. When you're done covering the existing lawn with cardboard, it's time to add a layer of compost and mulch on top. Spread your compost directly over the cardboard and then cover it with bulky materials like wood chips to optimize weed control. Adding compost will help build soil. However, if your main goal is weed suppression, you can just add the mulch and skip the compost. In total, the compost mulch layer should be about 2 to 5 inches deep. The top layer of mulch mimics the newly fallen organic matter of a forest. Good materials for this layer include chip plant debris, tree prunings, leaves, or even straw. You are going to need a lot of mulch. Typically, a smallish front yard can take 18 cubic yards of mulch. To find local sources for mulch, please see the resources accompanying this presentation. Now that you've laid down the cardboard and covered it with mulch, you're going to punch holes in the cardboard and place your plants in the soil under the sheet mulch. In cooler climates, smaller plants like 4-inch pots can be planted right into the mulch compost layer on top of the cardboard without digging a hole. Don't worry, the roots will break through the cardboard. You will want to add compost just around the root ball if you didn't already add compost on top of the cardboard. If you did, you're good to go. Remember, your new plants will require water and attention when they're young, even if they're drought tolerant. Just a couple other things to keep in mind. Don't pile materials up against tree trunks or stems of plants. This will help them stay healthy and disease-free. Especially during the dry season, small seedlings may need protection from snails and slugs that like to hide under the mulch. You can protect young trees from rodents with physical guards like metal bands that wrap around the base. So, congratulations! Your lawn has now been sheet mulched, and you've laid the foundation for a beautiful bay-friendly garden that you will enjoy for years to come.
Thanks for watching this.
Okay, so let's keep moving forward here. As a reminder, right now, there are some wonderful cash and material incentives through our local water agencies. So through the Marin Municipal Water District, they're offering, as of right now, $3 per square foot for to replace lawns, a maximum of $5,000 for residential and even more for commercial. And they have a free sheet mulching program where they will literally come out and do that. What you just watched in that video, they will come out and do that for you. So that's really wonderful. Similarly, the North Marin Water District has a generous program, $100 per 100 square feet of grass, a maximum of $800 for single family dwellings. And they also provide free compost, rolls of cardboard, and wood chips so that you could just roll this out and do it yourself. So these are really the perfect time to do these this kind of project. And of course, let's just hope that if that the rains are coming in a few months. So we're all going to keep our fingers crossed for that. Okay, so you've smothered your lawn. So the question is, now what? What do you do? It does not have to look like this. I promise you that. But it could quickly go from this to this. Now, this is my garden a few years back. Now things are much bigger because it's been a number of years, but I had this nasty lawn on the left that really took up the majority of my garden. And I knew that I wanted to change that up, so I did a lot of sheet composting and some other strategies. And but this area, as you can see, is shortly after planting, so that soil was ready to roll. And I cannot stress this enough: before you decide what to replace your lawn with, two important things. The first is to define your objective. What do you want to do with that space? As I mentioned earlier, it's so easy for all of us to think, okay, that's been a low green expanse. Well, that's what it's got to be again. So I'll just find something that looks like that. But really, there are all sorts of other ways you could use that space in reality, right? The question is, how will the area be used? Do you need to walk on it? Do you want to sit there? Do your kids want to play there, or your pets? Do you need a new entry or a path, color or green? Maybe it's a shed that you need. Maybe it's a place where you can actually have a built item. Or is there a view that you need to screen or enhance? It's so important to sit down and talk about that and really decide how you want to use that space. And second of all, is the ever important site analysis, which is a fancy way of just saying, what are you starting with, right? Is it a sunny area or shady or a mixed? What kind of a microclimate? You know, is it windy? Does it get boiling hot every afternoon? What's your soil and water situation? Just to get a really great idea of your surroundings. Because here's the thing, if you have a super sunny area and it gets hot and all this, and you're just dying to put in a plant that for shade, you know, you're going to be disappointed, right? So function first, and then what are you starting with, right? What are your site conditions that will help you choose plants for success? So let's start with if you want to walk on it. And before we go in and look at those plants, I want to emphasize something that is incredibly important. And that is that fake grass is not the answer. I see this going in more and more frequently, and it hurts me to see it, because there are two overarching reasons why artificial grass, artificial turf is not the way to go. The first is that it's extremely unhealthy for the environment. And here are some of the reasons why. First of all, of course, it removes space where living things can be, starting with plants, but it also has zero wildlife habitat value. No bees, no butterflies, no beneficial insects, no other living creatures, are going to be drawn toward plastic or rubber, whatever. It kills the life in the soil, basically bakes it, and it leaves little pieces of plastic in the soil for many, many years. And some feel that that plastic can actually stay for centuries. So think about what we're doing there, right? It's really scary stuff. It also could be impervious, preventing leaves and other important debris from infiltrating into the soil, again, impacting the soil, but also reducing the groundwater recharge, right? It is so important that we keep that water cycle clean and pure and active. And this starts to put the kibosh on that. It does not sequester carbon because it's not a living thing, so it doesn't help to mitigate anything. It is expensive, both to purchase, and it is also extremely energy intensive to produce, and you can imagine some of the chemicals involved there. Requires a leaf blower to keep it cleaned off. It is not weed free. I don't know if anybody has noticed. I've seen it on walks around town that people will have artificial turf, but weeds somehow will still take a foothold, and that is, talk about what is that expression? Adding insult to injury. So that's not a nice thing. And of course, eventually it's going to end up in a landfill where it's not biodegradable and will take so many years to break down. And what breaks down is not exactly what we want to have break down in our landfills. So we already know it's unhealthy for the environment, but guess what? It's also not healthy for humans. It can harbor harmful bacteria from pet waste and other pollutants that otherwise, it's just so unhealthy. It's just sitting on the surface of that plastic. It can get incredibly hot, causing injury like to children on sports fields. And I can vouch for this. When my kids were little, playing soccer on these fields, not only smelled bad, but it was very hard on the kids, if they fell or whatever, and tore up their knees and this kind of thing. The off-gassing actually adds to air pollution, which for some can cause respiratory issues, both for people and pets. So that's unpleasant. The recycled rubber in some of the lawns, some of the artificial turf, can contain heavy metals and chemicals that have been linked to cancer. And the so-called grass blades and the backing contain highly toxic chemicals, and these are those PFAS. I'm sure we need a chemist in the group here, but polyfluoroalkyls, something like that. These are referred to as forever chemicals, and let me show you why. Here's another one of our chain reaction events. Children breathe the chemicals from that off-gassing, right? And or they touch or swallow all those little tiny pellets that come with artificial turf, and I do remember these well from when my kids played soccer. Some of them fall into their shoes or in their clothing, and then they travel home in cars and then into our homes. And those accumulate in our bodies, unfortunately. And sadly, they do not break down. That's why they're called forever chemicals. Now, this is not the only place where these chemicals exist, but this is something that we don't have to have necessarily. And in fact, the Children's Environmental Health Center of the Icahn School of Medicine at the Mount Sinai School has urged a moratorium on the installation of new fields with artificial turf. So like I said earlier, I cannot emphasize enough that fake lawns are basically a scourge on the environment. And so I urge you to think about doing something differently. In fact, let's talk about all the living things you can, some of the living things that you can do, that you can replace your lawn with. So back to things that you can walk on. A lawn does not need to be manicured to be attractive. This is such a nice, soft, lovely look. So let's look at some of these plants. This is what I think about is we're just going to talk about horticultural eye candy here for a little bit, just some ideas. And by the way, hopefully you don't need to take any notes on any of these plants or so forth. It's all on the Marin Master Gardener website, and I will point you in that direction at the end. So here's a plant that makes a nice lawn alternative. Carrick's texensis, also called the Caitlin sedge. You can mow it once a year. It only gets a few inches tall. It's going to use a fraction of water that conventional turf does. This one is native to the Southwest, so you know that it's going to like heat. So for some of our more inland areas, Novato, some parts of San Rafael, San Anselmo, Fairfax going out that way, this could be a nice choice. Diamondia margaretii, I also call silver carpet. This is a incredibly dense mat, just 1 or 2 inches tall. It tolerates drought, cold, salt spray, poor soil, has deep roots, so it's going to stay in place. Has little yellow flowers, as you can see up here, that come out in summer. It's an excellent choice between stepping stones because it's so tight. And this is native to South Africa, another Mediterranean climate. And you can see an example of this at the Falkirk Cultural Center. The Master Gardeners have some beautiful gardens there. And there's a little bit of this, some of the edging of the succulent garden. And it is absolutely a very, very tough alternative. And again, an absolute fraction of the water that a lawn is going to take up. And a beautiful color, I might add, too. For those who really, really love that, that sort of manicured lawn look, there are lower water alternatives. It's not going to be as low as some of the others, but this one, Zoysia dianza, this one is used in sports fields and some golf courses for a lower water alternative. So you could look into one of those. Carrick's flaca is a beautiful blue sedge. When you see the word Carrick's, that is a sedge, a type of grass called a sedge. And I love this blue-green color. This will take a little bit of water, but again, less than a conventional lawn. It spreads, but it's not invasive. You can mow it, or you could just let it get longer and flop over, but it's quite beautiful. And then Festuca Rubra, I do see this one around town, and one of its claim to fame is that it is shade tolerant. And many lawn grasses, even conventional lawn grasses, are not. They really want mostly sunshine to look their best. And this one grows 1 to 2 feet long, or you can let it flop over as you see in this photo, or you can mow it. I have a friend who lives in Madrone Canyon, and she has Festuca Rubra, the red fescue, and she mows it, and it looks lovely, and it's going to need a lot less water, and it will need a little bit of shade in hot areas. So that's a good alternative. This is one of my favorites. This is white clover. This is what we all have been trying to take out of our lawns for decades, right? So this is an unbelievably easy lawn alternative if you want that low walkable look and functionality. It works in center shade, it stays tight to the ground, it tolerates close mowing if you want that look. It adds nitrogen to the soil, which is so valuable. It is drought tolerant, it stays green year round, even in lousy soil. It attracts bees, but again, if you don't want the bees for some reason, then you can just mow the flowers off. And one of its biggest selling points is that it does not leave any stains from pets. So that's a question we've gotten at the Master Gardener help desk: is what can I use that's not going to get nailed by my dog? So at any rate, white clover is a really, really great replacement. And I want to mention, so its botanical name is Trifolium repens. If you do order these, or any other plants for that matter, please try and use the botanical name. I know that sounds totally nerdy, but it is so easy to get mixed up with common names, right? In this case, white clover, but so many plants have multiple common names. And so but only one botanical name. So, and I know it sounds weird with all this Latin and so forth, but it is, but I can't tell you how many times people, I know people have been disappointed by ordering something by the common name and getting a different plant than they anticipated. So just be careful there. Here's another alternative. It looks a lot like the Clover. This is a newcomer now. I think it's just a few years old, with help through UC Davis. This is for drought, but also for flooding. It's super fast growing. It spreads, stays about an inch tall, maybe a little taller. Evergreen. It's sterile, so it doesn't spread. It's good for butterflies and bees. It's super deep rooted. They're actually using it on highway shoulders and some rooftops and public utility areas and some commercial properties, so you know that it's really tough. Anyway, so this is called Carapia, and if you like this look, then I encourage you to look into that one. It's a great newcomer. All right, so let's move along. What if you want a grassy look, but you don't necessarily need to walk on it? So many choices. Carrick's Panza, here's that word again, Carrick's, another sedge. This one is needs a little bit of water to establish, but then it requires very little. It's a California native, which I'm a big fan of. We can talk about a little more about that in a minute. It stays, you know, under a foot tall typically, spreads by rhizomes, so it just creeps out a little bit, but it doesn't create a big problem. You can have sort of a meadow look with this. And it works in both coastal and drier microclimates, so that's a big selling point. And a little bit of light foot traffic is okay on this one. I mean, you know, you can see there, it stays a little bumpy. The photo at the top, it's just kind of filling in, so it's going to have a little bit more of an even look when it's a little bit more mature, but it's a good choice. Similarly is the field sedge. And this is excellent for erosion control, for that meadow look, for green roofs even, or driveways. It tolerates drought, poor soil, salt spray, heat, cold, and some foot traffic. So this one grows to about a foot tall and it has this sort of thick, tousled appearance, and it snuffs out weeds beautifully. You can mow it if you want to get in there and keep it shorter, or you could just string trim it. Again, if you don't like too much of that tousled, big floppy look. This is another California native. This one in the summer, if you don't give it much water, then it's going to turn brown inland, but it'll come back. You know, so, and if you don't like it to brown out at all, then you can just keep giving it a little bit more water, but again, less than conventional turf. And one more Carrick's. This is the Foothills sedge, Carrick's Tumula, another native plant, super fast growing, about 2 feet tall and wide. It's very, very versatile. It works in both wet or dry soil. It works in sun or part shade, and that is a huge selling point, because sometimes we have situations where we need the same look for a plant, but it's going in and out of sun and shade, right? It has different exposure. And so this plant will stay pretty much the same look in whether it's in sun or part shade. So that's a big selling point. It's drought tolerant once it's established. It's very easy and reliable, beautiful plant. And Calamagrostis folio, so this is the Mendocino reedgrass, beautiful coastal native, good for, you know, again, some coastal areas. It has these really nice gray-green tones, and then in the fall, you'll get little purple stripes, really quite beautiful. The photo on the right is from my garden. I just love this grass. It likes full sun, and in summer, it needs little or no summer water whatsoever. And you can see an example of this in front of the College of Marin. I've noticed on College Avenue there, College at Sir Francis Drake, that they've planted some Mendocino reedgrass. Quite beautiful. And a taller grass, another one is the deer grass. This is if you have a little bit more space, probably about, you know, 3 feet by 3 feet, or 2.5 to 3 feet tall and wide. Once it's established, it needs very little water, easy and dependable, just a little bit of a larger scale grassy look. And I'm sure you've seen this one around town. This is Festuca Glaca, the blue fescue. It has a beautiful look, and it is drought tolerant once it matures. It can be a little bit short-lived, so maybe after 5 years or so, you might need to replace some of them. So that's something to consider with this one. But if you really love that blue look, it's quite lovely. And there are some beautiful cultivars, Elijah Blue and some others that have that really icy blue color, quite pretty. Okay, but what if that space, what if you don't even want the grassy look at all, or you don't need to walk on it? What if you want to eat it instead? Here's a perfect example of something where you wouldn't have even had to sheet compost this, sheet mulch this, because just putting those raised beds over a lawn would do it for you, right? It's going to snuff that grass right out. And then you can see they already put a little path in here. And that would keep, that's going to obviously not going to need to be watered. And this could be turned into path as well around the edges. And there you go. You've got this great looking edible area. Here's an example of where you could have just sheet mulched this whole thing and, just planted right into it with these edibles. So that'd be kind of a fun project. So what if you're just looking for something low and evergreen? And this looks like ever purple, but this is verbena, very tight verbena, but with that beautiful color. But you could easily see how something like this was a lawn before. And now it's just been replaced by something that's going to use a fraction of the water and be so much more interesting than a lawn. So here are just a couple of examples of those types of little ground covery plants. The trailing germander, wonderful plant, 1 to 2 feet tall, great for bees and so forth. Loves full sun, warmth, beautiful. Baccharis piulera. So this is a coyote bush, and I guarantee that you have walked by this plant or a relative of this plant on hiking in Marin. It's a pretty widespread plant in California. Not super exciting, frankly, just your basic evergreen, but is one of the best choices for beneficial insects. I remember reading some little study where they studied a bunch of different plants, and this guy had more beneficial insects per square inch or something than any others. But at any rate, it's just a very, very tough, low growing, in this case, the pigeon point Baccharis, Coyote Bush. Beautiful evergreen ground cover that's just going to spread out and just look super, green all year. Then there are the Manzanitas. These are among my favorite plants. They're absolutely spectacular, and they range from 1 inch tall to trees. They're absolutely gorgeous with that lovely red bark. They are very important environmentally because they're among the first plants that bees look for when they pop out in late winter or early spring, because this is when this plant blooms. As you can see, it's these little urns that hang upside down, and the hummingbirds and the bees just can't get enough. So they are a wonderful, wonderful plant that with a wide range of different types. And here's the beach strawberry. It grows very tight to the ground, or a couple of inches tall, or all the way up to a foot tall for some varieties. It creates a very dense mat, spreads by runners. If any of you have grown strawberries, then you'll know what I mean, how they just have the runners that come out. It tolerates sand in hot inland areas if it has afternoon shade and a little bit of water. And it is absolutely loved by birds. And of course, some of them have really wonderful little sweet strawberries too. So let's just say you're just thinking, okay, I've had it with this just plain green. I want something really colorful. Well, the sky is the limit there. We could just talk all day, but you could go for hot colors or cool colors, depending on your environment and your house and just sort of what you like. And of course, the world of succulents has just opened our eyes to an unbelievable array of wonderful, low water, such cool plants, just incredible plants. There's herbaceous ground covers, sort of like the other one we were talking about, the trailing germander. This one even stays tighter, the little creeping thyme. You'll see often in nurseries, verbena, lantana, coreopsis, all great choices, all great low water choices. And then there are the California natives, and there are so many benefits to using them. It's a whole other presentation, but they're just fabulous. You know, our California native plants are so beautiful. We are so fortunate to live in this area with all of this incredible flora. You know, I might point out that Mediterranean climates comprise 2% of the land mass in the world, but they contain 20% of the flora, 20% of the plants. So it gives you an idea how rich our environment is. And of course, California is a complete biodiversity hotspot. So this little mural here of plants gives you a good idea why. And of course, creating some habitat. You know, we're using up the space with built objects and buildings and freeways and so forth. And so we need to create some habitat for living creatures. Or perhaps a permeable path or a new entry. So many possibilities. Here's an example of a situation where this could have just been conventional turf, and somebody probably planted, there's probably just 2 or 3 species in here. I see a little bit of lavender, probably some carex. We were talking about the sedge grasses, and one other tight little ground cover back there. I can't tell from the photo, but so easy, so low maintenance, so low water. Or maybe you just need a place to sit down. Maybe you need a little patio. There are patios to fit any shape or budget. We're always hoping that people will opt for more permeable patios, such as these gravel examples, or you know, these examples where water can soak back into the earth when it rains. Or of course, you don't have to give up all your water. Maybe you can just carve out a little place where your lawn was and give a little bit of water there in a tiny little fountain, something that the birds will completely relish. Or, you know, here's a weekend project, right? Less lawn, more pond, putting a big pond in. That's a big project, but pretty cool looking. Or maybe you need a fun play area for the kids. And finally, how about your own little secret garden getaway, right? How about a little nook? Turn your grass into a place that you'll just relish going out and sitting and just enjoying some peace and quiet. So those, of course, are just some of the ideas. And this is all the ways that you can get in touch with the Master Gardeners. If you hold your phone up, as I mentioned, you will automatically be able to sign up for our leaflet, which is the free quarterly e-newsletter that the Marin Master Gardeners put out. You can also invite 2 Master Gardeners to come out and visit your home to help you strategize ways to save water. This is a free service we provide. So there are lots of ways to take advantage of all the things that the Master Gardeners offer. So that is it for that. So I'll stop sharing now. And let's see, Franklin, did you want to?
So the first question someone asked, can you have the raised bed in front of the house or in the back of the house?
Well, you could do it either place. It just depends on how you want to orient your garden. If you have edibles in raised beds, then I would probably recommend putting a fence around it, some type of a fence or barrier, so that, you know, if you have deer in the neighborhood, for sure, you're going to have to do that because the deer are going to mow down your edibles, but also dogs and just things you don't want them coming in necessarily for your edible items. So yeah, I love when I see people who have done different things like that to their front gardens. I think it's really great.
Okay, so if you have questions, you can either use the Q&A or put them in the chat, and I'll relay them to Marie. Give everybody a moment to type.
Somebody is asking if they'll receive a link to the recording, and it will be available afterwards,
Yeah.
I believe, right, Franklin?
Yeah, after I'm done today, we'll post it to our YouTube channel, and then everybody who's registered for today will get a link. I mean, their email as well as a survey for the Master Gardeners. It's a survey to help us improve the lectures or to see what other topics people are looking for. So please take a moment to fill out the survey. It really does help the Master Gardeners.
Thank you. I was going to show everyone where to find some of this information on the Master Gardener website. Unfortunately, the University of California, again, which we're a subset, they're having some IT issues right now, so I can't get on the website right now, but it's very intuitive. When you get on the Master Gardener website, there's an area, the menu is at the top, and if you click on plants, you'll see there's an area for lawn and lawn alternatives, but there's all sorts of other plant lists on there that you can access for ideas, and they are all Marin centric. They're all things that are going to be successful in our area.
Well, it doesn't appear that anybody has any questions. They're all going to go home and start working, I guess.
Well, that's good. That's good. Well, and this is great because we did it right in an hour, so that's good. I didn't want to keep people too long here. Okay. So this is great. Well, I want to thank everyone for coming, and I hope that you got ideas for what you could do with your lawn space.
Yeah, thank you, Marie. Thank you for sharing this with us again. And yeah, this had a lot more information than last time. Oh, here, maybe there's one last question of the walkable lawn substitutes are any less appealing to gophers?
Oh, that's a good question. You know, I'm not really sure. I'd have to look into that. I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure about that. I do know that people have really had some success with the Carapia and also the white clover, the Trifolium repens. I don't know that gophers really go for that. You know, I'm sorry, I'm not sure.
In the gardens like you have, I don't think people would notice them as much. In the bushes.
That's true. Yeah. So. I know in lawns they're so obvious, right? The mounds and all that, right? In a mixed garden, that's true. They just sort of scurry around. Yeah. Underground. Yeah. Great.
Okay, well, thank you everybody for joining us, and just keep an eye out on your email this afternoon. I'll send out the link with the recording, and you guys all have a great afternoon, and thanks for joining us.
All right. Thank you so much.
Bye, everybody.